So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Tania. Come here, Tania. This is non-coronavirus informed, but never mind. I read about Tania's story, and I realized that she belonged to the fold, to the sisterhood, and so pleased and honored to have her become a friend. And I will let her take it from here.
Thanks, Lou. I'm going to come up here. Of course, I didn't practice putting this into that. Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I can't even tell you. This is just almost surreal to me. I have to tell you that literally about a year ago, I was not really able to say my whole name. So I can't believe that I'm standing in front of you all speaking to you. A little bit of context, I think, first. First of all, I'm just really excited to share this art project with you. I think I have to take this off because I keep turning my head and it doesn't work. Where we can celebrate our own voices and each other's voices together. But before that, I'm going to show you a little bit of what I've done over the past year to help me get through what has been going on for me, and how I've used art and physical things, acts of doing. I call it acts of doing, which is such a silly phrase, really, but it's what works for me, to ground myself and to tell my story and to learn how to trust my voice. So I'm really excited to share that with you, but I thought it would be helpful to give you a little bit of context about who I am. And seeing in that a year ago, I wasn't really able to say my name, my whole name. I have it written out a little bit about who I am. But that's all good. My father was Ellsworth Culver. I grew up in the humanitarian aid world and Christian charity world. He was a celebrated diplomat and humanitarian. He helped to found many nonprofit organizations, including he was the vice president of World Vision and a lot of other places and things that you might recognize. He also was a co-founder of Mercy Corps, which is a top aid charity some of you may know about around the world. He was also a serial pedophile, and he abused me from when I was in preschool through high school. Something that I kept, well, actually I didn't. I told a lot of people. But a lot of people didn't do the right thing and didn't report, or they did report and it got covered up. Just a year ago, like I was saying, a year ago, I was involved in a very long, excruciating, and amazing at the same time, intensive 10-month investigation by a group of reporters to tell my story. It came out only 5 months ago in October. They shared my story that I had made credible accusations to Mercy Corps in the 90s, and that they covered it up, that they let him stay there for over a decade in a top executive role. He was the president as well, with access to many vulnerable people all over the world. He traveled everywhere. And they let him stay there until his death, and nobody did anything about it. And they also reported that there were numerous other disclosures that I had made in over 30 adults, and I'm blanking on the name, but mandatory reporters knew. There were 2 reports. But it's just, for me, it shows the importance of bystanders, that everybody needs to speak up. And I think back and I think about how hard this last year has been. It's just been enormously difficult, but amazing. And if I hadn't gone through all of that, then they would still be all be there. There was afterwards a whole bunch of resignations, and it was like a big wake-up call in the humanitarian aid world, which to me is very close and dear to my heart, because I feel like those people have no voice. A lot of the recipients are just really desperately in need, and they it's really down to their very survival. And so people, their voices, they need to have a voice. And so right now I'm kind of in the place of trying to find my place in this world, and I'd like to be able to speak and be able to share their voice, my voice, and speak for people who don't have one. So that's me right here. And I am so surprised that I'm standing here talking to you all. So thank you for listening. This is what I was doing last year. It's getting texts from one of the amazing journalists telling me that it was okay to speak. She's actually knowing that I'm here today, and she's knowing that I'm speaking like this. So it's pretty amazing. I always tried to speak. I used art. I'm also an art teacher and a mom. And this is a picture of a notebook that didn't have anything in it. And I didn't really realize it was a poignant piece of art for me until I was asked by Beth, the photojournalist, Beth Nakamura, why did you keep this? And I said, it's because it holds everything I couldn't say. At the beginning, I did a lot of writing. I wrote letters to myself, I wrote letters to people that I shared, and I wrote letters that I didn't share. I also made this poster, There Is Hope. I still have that. I made that when I was 15. I just needed to constantly write down and claim my truth, even when I couldn't share it, or when I did share it and nobody listened. And I think that's what kind of helped me live. One of the poignant things that I realized is that I didn't know why I was doing this at the time, but I remember being probably about 11 and writing down on a little scraps of paper something that was true. My dad scares me, or something else. And I would hide it behind picture frames. I realized that there was this spot behind a photo, between the cardboard and the back of the photo, and I would stick it in there, and that would be a place to hide it. But I didn't realize how poignant it was, that I was sticking these truths behind family photos. I was wanting somebody to find them, in a way, and also wanting to hide them at the same time. Both of those feelings coexisting together. So I've always used art even when I didn't really realize I was doing it. And then I became an artist myself, a traditional artist, I would say. I've used painting a lot. This is an example of how I've used paint and painting to kind of create safe spaces and reimagine things for myself. And in the act of painting these things, I sort of learned to value my experience with them and to trust that little girl and that piece of me really deserved that. And I was cherishing myself in a way by doing those things, by creating something different out of things that were traumatic to me, by putting something beautiful around it, or being able to then see myself in a way that was innocent. This is about flashbacks, and I wanted to celebrate myself. I wanted to celebrate my resiliency, so I painted these images to show that there's like this golden or red warmth in my heart to show that I wasn't giving up. It didn't kill me, and I was going to keep going, and I was going to push forward. I always have these little small. A lot of my paintings have me as tiny, because I think that was one of the ways I survived, by imagining myself in a world where I could be safe amongst flowers, where I was small in nature. It was. We talked about survival mechanisms and ways people cope, and that was one of the ways that I coped, and it worked for me. But in doing these things, in painting these things, I was kind of telling myself that those things that I did had value, those things that I was doing, that they were worthwhile, that my surviving and the ways that I chose to survive was worthwhile, and that helped me to believe that I am worthwhile. There's some other paintings. The one on the right, I have it written down because I always remember the name of it. It's a Japanese art form called, does anybody know? Where they take broken pottery, and instead of, it's called kintsugi. Am I pronouncing that right? Yeah, where they take broken pottery and instead of tossing it, they will take the pottery and elevate it to, something beautiful and actually identify the broken pieces with precious metals like gold. Last year I couldn't paint. It was so intense. What I was going through was so intense that I really actually couldn't paint. I didn't have the energy or the mental space to even do that. So I found myself doing these physical things. And it was a discovery for me as well, that doing these things really was a way that I could reclaim my power and that I could make choices for myself with my body and my whole being. This is one where I stood on the top of a bridge and wrote things that were important to me. There was a family event that I wasn't included in. This was even before the story went out. And I wrote down the things I needed to let go of, names of some of my family, phrases, who I was and am to you. And I learned that using photography was also a way that I was valuing myself and stating that what I was doing was beautiful, that my experience was beautiful, that even my pain could be beautiful and valuable, that I could hold space for that and make time for it. And that helped me to believe that my truth and my voice was valuable and what I had to say was important. Different ways. Photography, painting. Sometimes I did writing. I actually write a ton. I like to write poetry. You can see in the documentary in the story that came out, there were a lot of poems and things like that. That's been something really important to me, to be able to speak my truth in ways that I couldn't really do just in prose, just by talking. This goes to where sometimes it's both and, not just happy, not just sad, not just dark, and not just light. Sometimes it's beauty and ugly side by side, or grace along with pain or grief, because there is love. This tree showed me hope when the rest of the world had given up, and it seems foolish. The tree tried even still. And that makes me lead to the part where it's not always beautiful. It's not always this amazing painting. Sometimes it's raw and intense, but that doesn't make it any less important or any less magnificent. That's my father's grave, but I took a photo of myself and my hands that I had dug up the grass and I had thrown it on there. I went to his grave and I needed to say something. And let me tell you, I did, and it's probably a good thing no one was around because they might have carted me off somewhere. But I needed to do that. And at the end of it, I saw my hands and I saw how green my nails were and how I washed my hands and they were still, it was just in my knuckles. And it looked like pain, but it also looked like strength and it looked like grit to me. So I was celebrating that by photographing my hands, that they're that strong that I could go there and do that. And that meant a lot to me. And I still didn't realize I was using photography. And until I went through and made this slideshow, I didn't even realize that photography was my thing. Later, right before the story came out, I went back, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Most of the time, I don't always know what I'm going to do. I just start. I just try and just go for it. Just start with an idea. And I went to the grave, and I brought some photos and some books. I just threw some things in and went there because I needed to face it. I needed to go to that place. And those are my baby shoes. And there's a Dr. Seuss book that's all about me, and I had traced my hand when I was 5, and I think again when I was like 8 or 9. I put my hand on top of that saying, this is the truth. And taking that photograph really, really meant to me, I'm saying the truth, and this is what's valuable. These are origami cranes. This goes into where place. I started having to go to places to reclaim and to proclaim things that I couldn't do before. Sometimes I think it had to do with my power was taken away in these places, and by going back to them, I was able to reclaim something that I couldn't before. I was able to choose, make a choice with my whole body to do something, to claim something that was true that I couldn't before. And I went to my childhood home with these cranes, some that my friend had made and some that I had made, or one that I had made. And I'm putting that in there on purpose to say, she loved making these origami cranes, and it was very therapeutic for her. She was also a witness in my abuse, and so this was helpful for her to do. It was therapeutic for her to do. I hated making those origami cranes. It was like tearing my hair out. It was not therapeutic for me, but hanging them was. So we all have a different way, and that's completely good and okay and wonderful. That for her, making those was just an act of therapy for her and for me, but for me it was the hanging, not the making of them. I went to the path where I used to hide, and I put that stuffed animal and a golden crane, and we hung cranes all along the path. And it was really just amazing for me to be able to go there and say, I am innocent. That little girl was innocent, and I'm letting her go. That was my bedroom window. Put them there too. I went back a month later and I couldn't believe they were still there. I don't know how I couldn't believe they were still there. So the ones in the path were too. And in Oregon, where it rains all the time. So this picture is right before, that's my Wonder Woman jacket. And that is Mercy Corps. They're outside of their building. It was so ironic to me that that's what it says. Stand up, speak up, stand up, show up. Change starts here, right outside their building. And the night before the story came out and broke, I went there with my friends, and I had to face my dragons and make the choice that I am not powerless no matter what happens. Here I am. This is what I'm doing, and I'm choosing it. And it was really poignant to me to be able to do that, to take that photo. Those photos. And it was also fun. It was really fun and bold and terrifying all at the same time. It's like all those things all mixed together. But it was a lot better than sitting at home being scared. This is after the story broke. This is something that the Mercy Corps employees did. They covered the square saying, "Tania, we believe you, we stand with you, we support you," which was actually really unusual. And I feel very blessed that happened. I had to go there and touch it because I couldn't really believe it, which was a physical thing that I had to do. But it was something they had to do. They couldn't really cope with what they discovered about their organization, and that they were trying to help people, and that this is what happened in their organization. It was too much. People were crying. They were angry. They were devastated. Hundreds of people. There are thousands of people in that organization who have had to make their own art. They've made posters and sent me images of them. It's really fascinating to me, but I'm really grateful that they were able to use that and that they were able to do this. It helps them. I went back a few weeks later, and this was my need to have a reality check because the chalk was not there, and I needed to see that the chalk was not there. And it didn't mean that those sentiments weren't there, but I needed to hold on to all the other realities that are involved in that. So I went back there and took a photograph. Look at my thing. Well, let's just click and see. Oh, we'll go back to that first. One thing that I wanted to say about these things was that what I realized, especially as I was going through making this slideshow, is that all of these things that I was doing and was something that you would do when you have an honored guest come. Like, you spend the time, you take photos, you give the space, you treat them like they're important, even in the little things. Even if you're just going to the mall or something, you might take a picture. When I treated my experiences and my feelings and my memories and whatever was going on for me like an honored guest, I told myself that I had value and that those experiences had value, which in turn made me believe it. And then I was able to do it more. And then when I was able to do it more, I was able to believe it more. And I didn't realize that until putting this together. It's like a photo album from a visit from some special friend. Oops, pushed the wrong button. Right after the story came out, I had to do something. This goes back to the physical acts. They had to kind of match me, and I had a hard time. That was such an intense experience to me doing that. It was over hundreds of hours of interviews. There was a documentary put out, and I had to go and just talk about everything. Lee was talking about the media the other day, yesterday, and that was really, really, really hard. I'm very thankful I had some really conscientious, thoughtful reporters, but even then, it's really, really hard. And I just needed to get it out. I needed to be triumphant in a way that matched how painful it was. It was painful even though I was grateful at the same time. This is the Oregon coast, and I don't know if any of you have been to Oregon, but it is freezing. The water is freezing cold. But that just was perfect. And my friends and I went out, and I completely dunked myself. I just about had like hypothermia afterwards, but I had to do it. I had to do something with my body that expressed that. And this is one of my favorite photos. I was like so cold, I can't even tell you. My legs were on fire. But it was so worth it. And if I hadn't, I just felt like I couldn't get it out. I couldn't get out what was inside of me enough. And it really made me value how intense that whole process was for me. And my voice. This was my voice. This image is my voice after that. That's how cold it was. That's my feet afterwards. They were white and red. And I put that in there to show, it's a little bit of humor. That's the hot tub. I couldn't even get in because my feet were so cold. I felt like I was sitting in a vat of like fire ants or something. But I find it humorous, and I also find it poignant. And it's like the picture of my hand. Like what I went through was powerful, and I was tough, and I could do it. And I could take those pictures of myself and say, there you go. The last image I have up here is of a dandelion seed. And you'll see on your table there's some dandelion seeds there. I took that photo during the time when I was in that investigation, and I was having multiple interviews where I would sit in front of a camera. And one of the things that happened to me was I was also photographed. So I'm a victim of child pornography. So sitting in front of a camera, even today, being filmed, was really hard. And choosing to, I say having to because I felt like I had to for my own safety. Really, I had to get this story out for my safety because that was important. But I chose it to sit there and answer all of those questions and go through all of those details was like, I call it like emotional boot camp. It was just, it was really, really, really hard. And that I held in my hand the whole time. For every interview, I had that thing in my hand. And I went for a walk, and I picked a lavender sprig, and I just took a picture of it because I was trying to acknowledge this is how important that was to me, that little dandelion seed. And I'm going to tear up because I felt alone. I did all of those things alone. And I did them alone. The journalists would come, and then they would leave. And I didn't really know about self-care then. I didn't have anybody with me. I was by myself. They would be there for a few hours. We would film. I mean, this was weekly. This was constant. And they would leave. And I would be alone. And I thought, that's why I have a single dandelion flower. I'm alone. But I'm strong. I held on to it. But I'm going to do a little active doing, a little act of art here today, because here's the dandelion flower. And not flower, seed. And I'm not alone. I brought it with me. It's traveled through all of that. And here it is with me today, because now I'm not anymore alone. And I'm so grateful. just beyond grateful. Trying to find my place in this world, but I'm not alone, and neither are any of us. All of our voices are totally different. We have such different stories and different backgrounds, and yet we are all so vital, and we are all like honored guests. And we're not alone. And so the project that I'm hoping to do with you today is to celebrate that and to commemorate that we are all, to commemorate and celebrate our voices individually and also collectively together. So you'll see at your table there are, let me get a stack here, a stack of different colored papers. There's one of these. You can save this one to later. This, actually, I'll just tell you about it now. If there's time for you to do it now or later, anytime today, you can make one of these. I have the dandelion seeds. I drew these seeds for you. And if you want to tear it out, and you can thread the thread around there, or you just make a loop. You don't have to do anything fancy. It's completely up to you. You should make your own choices about how you want to do it. You don't even have to do it. So at the table, there's these papers. And, well, first let me tell you about the thread. So the red thread. The red thread is representative of what ties us all together, one of the things that ties us all together, or that we are all tied together. At your tables, I'm hoping that you'll be able to use the paper to, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me just back up. So we're going to each pick a color and tear off a little piece of paper, around, you can choose the size that you want. It doesn't have to be big. It could be really small, because it should be something that you choose that represents you, a color that represents you and that represents your voice. Whatever shape you want, heart, square, circle, squiggly line, whatever means something to you. I hope that you will take it and do something that means something to you. And on that, write whatever to you represents your voice, what you would like to say. It could also be blank. You may not want to say anything, and that's okay too. Maybe you're just here and your presence is what you want to say. You need to think about that yourself and just come up with something. I don't want to give too much direction because I want it to be from you. But you'll tear off a little shape, and write that. And then together as a table, if you could talk about the things, one of the things that holds us together and that we can all share is our shared values. Whether our stories and our backgrounds are different, I think we all have shared values. Whether that's the value of truth or love, friendship, there's so many things. So if at your tables you could decide on some of those things and make some little papers that you would write those on as well. And then, I need two hands. I'm going to have to put this in here. So then after you do that, there's these threads. Now they're blunt, so you're not gonna poke yourself. I got blunt needles. So what I'd like you to do is to write it on there, and let's say that I have, tear off a little piece. The easiest way to do it is to make a little fold there, and then you just poke it through, like that. And then connect all of your pieces at your table. So all of your voices and your shared values, however you choose to do it. It could be in order. It could, however you want. Make it meaningful to you onto a string with at least a foot or so, maybe 2 feet in between. These are 24 feet long. Make sure you save out at least about 5 feet of it, but you can use the rest of it. Maybe less than 5 feet. So if you could do that at your tables now, and then you have about 10 minutes or so to do that, and then we'll come and we're going to do something else really cool with it.